Okay, I think I'm going. Alright, I'm going. I'm going. Okay, so this is She Kills Monsters show impressions, and it's done by me, and this has taken like 2 days of my life at this point. So let's get into it. I'm gonna leave it in this form because I have speaker notes down here. Alright, costumes. For the narrator, the description that we get in the text is a hooded female and like Galadriel, which is very helpful. The narrator isn't really much of a character. If I were directing, I'm not sure that I would have her on stage at all. Plus, the whole point of having a narrator is for it to be an impersonate voice on stage, which is fitting with the text description that hooded figure with their face being obscured is on stage. This is a really simple costume. There's not a whole lot to it. I searched up Jedi robes and this will work here. The brown, it's a pretty nothing color, but it's just off black enough to stand out against a black backdrop or against a darkened stage. All right, Tilly. We have a lot of things to say about Tilly. Tilly she's the subject of this play pretty much, and the entire play sort of dissects her character. And throughout the play, we see that she's trying to project this air of mastery of her world and this self-confidence. She's trying to project that, but she is deeply insecure about both her sexuality and how other people think of her. Um, and so I've come up with this costume here. She does it does give us an objective description of her, the full leathery D&D outfit with a cool ass sword. Well, I found two cool ass swords. Um, I've got oh no, that's next. I've got this one right here, and then I've also got this one. Um, Either of these would work. Uh, I'm thinking a more eloquent sword, more simple and tasteful. Don't worry, we'll get into gaudy stuff later with Lilith and Calliope, but um, this simple sword works for her character because while she is trying to project this air of mastery and all that, she doesn't quite have it. And so I think the simple sword works for her. Now onto this costume arrangement that I have here. Um, the hood I think is necessary for the reason that Lilith, or not Lilith, Agnes and Tilly have constant asides during the play, and if she's got a hood, whenever she's feeling angry or she's feeling upset for whatever reason, she can put on the hood, and it'll be just like Holden Caulfield's A Hunting Hat. Whenever he's upset in that book, he puts on his hat, and it's his security blanket. And so in the same way, we can have the hood for Tilly here. And I really don't like how this play is so irreverent of uh, all of the otherwise serious moments that it has in this play, but this at least allows for us to continue on with the comic nature of the play and still be able to physically see that Tilly's upset or something like that. Um, that said, she is trying to project that. God, the little scroller thing on my mouse, it keeps going down. It's unfortunate. Um, that said, she is trying to project that air of mastery, so we're going to show this through, she's got bare shoulders or whatever. She's got this tight clothing because she's really trying to be more mature than she is. But at the same time, it's exactly that. She's trying to be more mature than she is, so I would advocate for these clothes being about a size too big for her. And that's going to show that she's still got room to grow into, very, very literally. She's still growing into her full self. And of course, that never happens because she dies. I've got this little shield here, it says that she's a paladin. Paladins are typically holy knights that specialize in healing and tanking. Not really something that you would associate with a leather-clad rogue here. I'm not even touching it now, I swear. It just goes on its own. Not really something that you would associate with a leather-clad rogue. But this little target shield here would maybe help to sell the fact that she's supposed to be a paladin. I don't know. You can say that it's magic or something if you wanted to add a throwaway line into this. And then finally, I had this little picture of Darla here. I don't know if the braces are completely necessary, but I do think that the pigtails are necessary because Tilly she's very young. She's only what 14 or something when she dies, and she probably wrote this before that. So the pigtails here I feel are appropriate to show the audience that she's still pretty young. That's really all I have to say about that. Okay, now for Agnes. And I realize that it's probably Agnes, but when I read this first, I saw Agnes, and every time I say Agnes, I want to say Angus, and so I've stopped trying to do that. Anyway, Agnes, she's got a pretty nothing description of her costume. It says, I teach English 3, which means that she's a teacher. We can extrapolate a bit from how her character is portrayed. She's a very professional woman, and there's no better example of the professional woman than Agent Scully from the X-Files. And honestly, that costume works pretty perfectly for Agnes here. If you wanted to go a little bit more subtle with your characterization through costume, I would suggest having her. Oh, I'm hitting this little button on the bottom here. Okay, I've got buttons on the side of my mouse that I'm not used to. Anyway, if you want to be a little bit more subtle, I would suggest starting her off wearing these clumsy high heels when she first gets into the game world and having her stumble a little bit. But then as she gets more comfortable in the game world, transition her over to boots so she's got sure footing in the game world, literally and figuratively. As far as the sword that she's supposed to carry around, the closer it looks to a St. Peter's cross like what I've got here, the better. Just something simple. She says that she wants a simple sword, and honestly, that does work for her. She's very no nonsense. And finally, the module that she has around it should look something like this, nice and leather bound. I've got a book in my room here somewhere that would work about perfect for it, but I'm not flipping the camera around to front facing, so you won't be able to see it. Okay, Chuck. Chuck here. He dressed like a grunge rocker roadie. Now, I did not know that there were male roadies, but apparently there are. And yeah, this is grunge right here in its best form. I like this guy better right here because of the long hair, not because he's white. And this is actually one of the characters where it would be you could go either way very easily, and of course you can do that with any character, but this one especially. But I like this guy's long hair here. It makes him look less professional and more gross looking, which is kind of what Chuck is. Chuck doesn't have a whole lot of character to speak of. We've kind of passed the two characters that get explored well in this. Everybody else is kind of just a function to provide Tilly and Agnes with ability to grow. Chuck here, he is the Nick Carraway of this story, and Nick Carraway is essentially he's the narrator in The Great Gatsby. He does play minor roles in the plot, but really he's just there to give us a first-person account of what happens to Jay and all of those other people. I forget what their names are right now. But as far as his costume goes, you can have grunge, or if you want to modernize him, you can have him wear these baggy gray sweatpants and some kind of tacky, oversized t-shirt with screen printing on it. Alright, Miles. Miles is essentially Roy from The Office, or at least that's how I read him while I was reading through this play here. He's a tool, he's bone-headed, he doesn't really do any maturing throughout the entire play. So I would just say put him in work clothes. Like that's the literal interpretation of somebody being a tool. So just have him in work clothes and jeans and boots the entire time. He doesn't. He's Miles is not a great guy. Um, this is all the characterization we're going to give him. All right, Lilith. Lilith is interesting for a couple reasons. One, we do get the scantily clad demon warrior um, interpretation from the text directly, but this goes back to the story being mainly about the dynamic between Agnes and Tilly. Now, Lilith in game is a projection of Tilly's imagination, and you have to remember that when you're making the costumes for her and Calliope, because Tilly loves both of these people, and because of that, they're going to be over sexualized. Um, and I don't know if that's how real people work, but that's certainly how this text wants you, how the text of the play wants you to interpret it. And so because of that, some kind of costume, like any of the three things that I have here, would work. I go into detail in the writing about how to make the wings possibly. The axe here comes directly from the text. She's got a battle axe. Either one of these would work or something like that. Um, yeah, I know from experience these would be a pain in the butt to cut out. You'd have to have so much so much tight turning, and then there'd be painting on top. These would be a pain. If you can order them somewhere, do that. Um, anyway, these are the main colors that I would work with for her. We're moving on. All right, cast members in their real forms. Everybody here, they do have all the game characters. They have real life forms. Just have the actors bring in some street clothes, and if you're doing this in professional theater, um, have the guys wear jeans and t-shirts, and the girls have hoodies and v-necks and I don't know, jeans probably too, or dress pants. Just dress them up like regular teenagers. Go to a high school if you need to figure out what teenagers look like. It's not rocket science. All right, Calliope. Basically for her, um, yeah, just the cloak and the green shorts, the short green shorts, and some slippers. As far as character goes for her, there's not a whole lot here other than she is a projection of Tilly's imagination. Um, that said, this is a fantasy world, so her weapons should kind of reflect that. She's said to have knives. I'm not sure if she's got a bow or not. I always imagine her having a bow, but that's probably because I just imagine all elves carry around bows. But it should be some sort of comically ornate bow that obviously wouldn't work in real life, like this one that I've got listed down here. That'd be a good example of something like that. You don't even have to have a string on it, just have her carry around something like this. Um, yeah, she should. Calliope should basically just look like. Oh, shoot, what's her name? Tariel from the Hobbit films, except with less clothing. That would that would be about accurate for her. Okay, now we have one of my favorite costumes that I cobbled together, the kobolds. So there are a couple of instances in this play where we need some throwaway bad guys. At the very beginning is where these guys first make an appearance. So for the costume, I was struggling with how to make a goblin for a little bit, and obviously you need some sort of goblin mask. This one that I found right here is like 50 bucks online, but I imagine you could either make or find something at Party City that costs a lot less than that as far as masks go, and it wouldn't be that difficult. Then this right here, this is a onesie, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles onesie, um, that you can buy for £1 online, which is approximately $2. These shoes down here, they do cost $50 if you want to buy these ones right here, but I imagine you could make something like them with hot glue and a pair of Crocs and some bear claws. Just hot glue the bear claws onto the Crocs. The knife here is, I think it was $5 that I found online. And then to make the more obscure details of this, like the obvious fact that this is a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, um, make that less obvious. Put a cloak on this guy. Okay, that doesn't work, but you get what I'm saying. Put a cloak on this guy. It'll cover up the other stuff, but still leave the audience seeing the green skin or whatever. And make it a raggedy cloak. That would probably be the best idea that you can come up with. I think this is the one from before. Somebody just edited little white lines into it. That's really neat. Anyway, getting off topic. Orcus in his game form. Yeah, basically, if you can make him look like Brothor with orange or not orange shorts, red shorts, and orange body color, you will have done everything that you needed to do. Give him a pair of horns if you can find any that you like. Otherwise, they're not absolutely necessary. Yeah, there's not a whole lot to say about Orcus's costume. There's no grand characterization to go into him. He's just a peanut gallery character. All right, Vera. Now, I read Vera a few different ways while I was doing this. The most compelling reading that I did of her, I found if I read it in the voice of Phoebe from Friends. And so to that end, basically you can just pick any costume that Phoebe has in season 1 of Friends, and it'll work great for Vera's character. If you want to get symbolic with it, give her some sort of clothing that's a light yellow. Yellow is the color of curiosity, which is something that counselors should be very into. Steve. Oh, Steve. So Steve is basically just Kenny from South Park. Yeah, he walks onto stage and he gets murdered every single time, or he gets told to shut up or go away or something like that. And he says he's the great mage, Steve the great mage, it is I. And he shows up and then he dies constantly. To that end, make him look like a level 1 wizard in any RPG worth its salt. The blue robe, the stick, the pointy hat, and some black boots that look old is really all they need. This drawing over here, I'm very, very proud of it. It took me a whole 7 seconds to draw. This is about the level of effort that you should put into his costume, because he's really not that much of a character. He's a pretty nothing character, and his only purpose is to die. So that's what we have in this drawing over here, this lovely, lovely drawing. Okay, the bugbears. Now, bugbears in Dungeons & Dragons, according to a friend of mine, look like this. And so I did my best to recreate that. I couldn't quite come up with anything that would give us this green skin tone or whatever, but I did realize that a gorilla suit would probably be about right for this sort of thing, and it would fit more in with the bear description, which the audience would probably expect. He's got a large kite shield over here. That's what this is called. This guy right here. It's available for purchase. I've got the exact things that I googled down there. You don't have to scroll down at all. You should be able to see them on the first page of hits. This is a troll mask, and this is a morning star. No characterization things to get into. Alright, Farah. Now, this is another thing where we just need to find something that looks like a fairy. Except the problem here is that we're dealing with size scales. And provided that you can't find a floating child actor, the best way, or the cheapest way that I know to deal with size discrepancies is with a morph suit and a model. So you just have one person in a black morph suit that says all the lines and everything, and then they're holding a dowel or something with a model on the end of it. You could probably give her a red dress instead of a green dress because, you know, she's aggressive. I think it would be really funny to have Tinkerbell be the... Oh, excuse me, I just ate supper, burping a little bit. I think it would be really cool to have her wear a red dress, just because she's aggressive. But if you do have the resources to go full Avenue Q, and by that I mean like full on hand puppets that somebody intricately choreographs, and you can have the actors wear the same clothes as the people that are or as the puppets. Do that because that honestly looks really good. And if you haven't seen Avenue Q, I'd recommend it. It's hilarious. Okay, so we have Evil Gabby and Evil Tina. Now, I wasn't sure what they meant by cheerleaders exactly, so I just went with NFL cheerleaders. If they mean high school cheerleaders, then just change the school colors to be gray and red, I guess. I didn't come up with an example of that. These guys are also going to have wings. But yeah, the Buccaneers cheerleaders have about the right color palette to be devils. They're also going to have wings. I outlined how to do wings in my Lilith characterization discussion. I have down there the vampire teeth. I'm not sure if they're worth it. Most audience members won't be able to see that, and it'll probably make it weird for the actresses to talk. So maybe not the vampire teeth. That probably wouldn't be the greatest idea. Alright, this is my favorite costume the entire play, the gelatinous cube. Now, I did struggle for a little bit figuring out how you could do an onstage morph between a cube, which I was thinking at the time would have to be a blow-up piece of canvas, and how you would have that transform directly into Miles. And then I realized you could just have Miles hide under a box painted like a cube, and then have him throw the cube off stage and just be there. Fun story, I actually did this in our production of Shrek. I was a milk carton for a scene, and then at the end of the scene, I got up and walked off the stage. It was quite fun. But yeah, I've got it outlined here. You can take a closer look at that because this video is going to be really long anyway. The time at, again, when we did Shrek, we had to order a dragon. We had to rent it. It should look something like this. I'm not artsy enough to go over how that would be created. Okay, now we have the scenes. The overworld for the game world. This is the main game set. Some sort of brown color. It needs to be a believable floor for an apartment. It needs to be a believable tile for the school, and it needs to be believable ground for the game world. Yeah, that's your floor paint color. So I went with a light brown, which I thought could be a hardwood floor. Also, it's a believable tile color, and it's obviously the color of dirt. The backdrop for the game overworld, I have the Windows PC background that was very prevalent in the 2000s, the early 2000s. This is more or less what it should look like, just some rolling hills and sky. Nothing too special. And to create the illusion that this grass here continues down onto the stage, I'd suggest putting down bits of turf. It looks like grass. It's easy to move, easy to pick up in between scenes, and just kind of scatter that around. It doesn't need to cover the entire floor, just parts of it, and that'll give the illusion that the grass is still going down onto the stage. The characters aren't suddenly just in a mud path that's spawned somehow in the middle of the road. Later, there is going to be the Mountain of Steepness scene, and then also in Orcus's Cave, there'll be cause for rocks to be around. Fake rocks like this would work great for that. They are pretty spendy, though, so keep that in mind. Okay, the Demon Lair. Now, I'm going to introduce something that I'm going to call the CBS in my paper. It's the cheat box set. So it's like a box set that you would find on a sitcom or or something like that, except it cheats out on the sides there, and that's so that more audience members can see inside of it, as well as give the actors a bit more room to play around in. Now, I see this being either entirely on a platform, or the walls themselves are conjoined and they're on wheels that you can wheel on and off the stage, because this is going to come on and off quite a bit. And maybe you can put different colored rolls of canvas or whatever, so you can change it and redress it between scenes quickly. But for this scene specifically, you're going to want a couple of shelves along the walls, and when we get to the lighting, you'll see the general outline that I had imagined for this set, depending on where it's at. But yeah, you're going to need a couple of shelves. The shelves should be filled with Renaissance Fair crap, essentially. This stuff breaks all the time. I bought a few things at the Renaissance Festival last time I went, and they're all broken now, and all they did was sit on my shelf and get hit with a couple of books. But that's besides the point. It needs to have a big TV, because Orcus is watching TV when they walk in on him. He's also in a really comfy chair. Get out, Callie. Siblings, I tell you what. So this chair here, it's got to be pretty comfortable. And then I imagine an archway here, just for Orcus's cave here. Because it is a cave, it's not like an apartment or something that you would have a door on. So just the archway there should be fine. Other than that, it should be a messy place, because Orcus has really given up on any sort of responsibility. And that's really his only character trait. So there's that. We can exemplify that fairly easily. The game world, the fairy forest. This is where we find Farah at, or whatever. Just put some fake trees around the overworld set and some vines, and then make the backdrop look like a jungle, or something that the main characters could kind of Mary Poppins their way into and continue to walk around in. The boss room, I made a little mock-up in Minecraft. I was going to have that pulled up, but then it became 9 o'clock, and I wanted to not be here until 11. So you'll just have to settle for the pictures. The backdrop should look like this, or something, or like this. You can have torches, a couple of torches on set. Again, when we get to the lighting, you'll see that more clearly. But it should just be a dark and foreboding place. If you ever played a video game like Castlevania or Meteorite with Samus, just the boss rooms that you'd expect to see in those kinds of video games imagined in real life, that'd be about right. Oh, okay, the counselor's office. This is also going to be on the cheat box set. It should just look like a normal office and a school, really, except maybe have some hippie stuff scattered around. I mean, we are thinking of this as if Phoebe from Friends had an office, so she would probably have Dreamcatchers or Bob Marley posters or stuff like that. Not too complicated. Okay, Anya's room. Now this is going to be interesting, and you will see this when we get into the lighting and the audio cues and stuff like that. But Anya's room is it's going to be this small corner of the stage where Chuck is going to sit, because we have to switch from Chuck and Anya's talking to Anya's and the rest of the game world. And we have to do this constantly throughout the play, and so you need to have both of them on stage at the same time. In order to maintain the pace of the play. You can't just have a full-on scene change in between each time. That'd be ridiculous and really boring and really tacky and awful, probably. So we need to have this on stage, and so because of that, we need to keep Anya's room very minimal. The set that I came up with involved a card table, a folding chair, a coffee table, a desk lamp, a standing lamp, and a pile of books. And you'll see how those all fit together later. But this set, if you can call it that, is very much a function set rather than an aesthetic one. We've got a couple of aesthetic uh, elements to it, and I get into that a bit more in the paper. Okay, the Real World Game Store. We're going to use the cheat box set for this. When I first heard of this, I immediately thought of the comic store from Unbreakable. So in that movie, Mr. Glass gets he falls down a set of stairs and breaks all of his bones, and he goes to a comic store for some reason. I forget why he does that. But he goes to a comic store. I immediately thought of that. Things you'd find at a comic store. You should have a bunch of Dungeons and Dragons books if you can find them. The board for it. I mean, there's not really a board in Dungeons and Dragons. The few times that I've played this, they have an entire table and it's filled with graph paper, and you move the little figurines around on the graph paper. It's exhausting. But yeah, then the little figurines would be great to stack on the shelves or whatever, and you should have a couple of shelves, and we'll see this when I get into the lighting here very soon. Finally, we have Tilly's bedroom. They're only in this scene for once, and as I was reading it, I realized that her room probably looked a lot like my room, so I just took a picture of my room with a panoramic. The closer you can get to this feeling, where everything is all over the place, and it's a slob, and she's got nerdy stuff all over, probably the better. And if you're wondering, my room is like this because I don't have very much room and I need all of my school stuff out constantly, so I'm not putting anything away until after finals are done. Okay, lighting. I've got a bit of a legend here because I don't want to have to explain things all the time. If you see one of these things, it's a stationary lighting set on stage, independent lighting, and it's turned off because it's black. And if they're yellow, then they're turned on. Easy enough. This is a wash lighting. It's transparent. It'll be wash lighting. This is spot lighting. It's transparent, but it's also smaller. This indicates turf placement, this indicates a fake rock, and this indicates a jungle tree. Alright, so game overworld set. Part 1, we're going to have Jewel Spot and the narrator, and we're going to have lights up, just nice wash lighting on Tilly. And I do go in a bit in depth on in my paper about certain specific and more complicated aspects of the game overworld, or of the lighting things. For shadow presentation, this is a trick that I learned in one act. If you put the projector behind a screen and make the screen more or less opaque, just like a single layer of canvas or something, you can have shadow puppets behind the screen, and it projects the shadows onto the screen, and then you don't have to have a projector in front or anything like that. And I think that would work really well for the shadow puppet presentation that the script calls for here. Okay, here's what I was saying about the real world game set. So I've got a couple of independent lamps here, and then this is a wall fixture. That's what this is, little wall fixture. And we've got a desk and a couple of shelves. As far as what color the lighting should be, it should just be some boring fluorescent lighting. This is a comic store. I mean, it's not the with the Taj Mahal. That's what I was thinking of. It's not the Taj Mahal. It doesn't have great lighting. Yeah. And the reason that we have the independent lighting sources on there is so we don't get weird shadows behind people, which can happen if you solely rely on lighting that is coming from above. Okay, so at this point in the play, Miles and Anya's are talking about how Tilly's a slob or whatever. So we have Tilly's room set here, and I've got a whole bunch of stuff labeled. But after Miles leaves, Chuck is supposed to pop out from behind a table, so he's going to be about right. You can't even see that, can you? Wow. Because I don't think my mouse records on this. But there's a little X here from Chuck is hiding, and then X marks the spot down here. He's hiding back there, and so when he pops out, if it's possible, build some steam/smoke dispensers into the dresser. And then have some kind of strobe effect, if that's allowed. I'm not sure if that's allowed in theater, you know, epilepsy and whatever. but then he'll pop out. So when we're introducing the characters, we're going to bring the spotlights up on them one by one as they introduce themselves. And Chuck, whenever he's talking, and this is going to be standard practice throughout the rest of the play, whenever Chuck is talking during the game world, cut everything else. Keep the lights on or whatever, but cut the audio and cut the movement on stage. So people should freeze in place whenever Chuck and Anez have their little asides. And you should bring a spotlight up on Chuck so that you can see him or whatever as he's talking, and Anya should physically like turn around or do something like that where they're just talking back and forth. There are going to be a few exceptions to this, and mainly that applies to when Chuck breaks the narrative of the game world. When he's talking and it's going with the narrative of the game world, this is not necessary. You can just keep him in darkness with his little lamp that he's got right there. And this is just going to be enough so that if the audience wanted to look over and see him, they could. But it's not going to be a distraction because it's just a little lamp light. It's just a little bit. It should be pointed right down at the desk, and then whatever bounces off of the desk is going to be what hits Chuck. That's all I have to say about that scene. So yeah, that's basically all I had to say there. This is the thing for scene 3. For scene 4, we're going to have our conversation at the beginning of that scene happen in the indicated area. And I've got the rocks there or whatever. And then Orcus's hangout is, of course, it's in the cheat box set. Then when they walk over there, just turn the lights on in that area. Vera's office is going to look like this. You get used to this set right here. You're going to be seeing a lot of it. This thing, it's basically the same thing as the comic store, just redress it a bit so it looks different. But otherwise, yeah, just standard wash over it. There are some specific things that we'll do with this later, but for this scene, it's not necessary. Okay, so Chuck is talking for a lot of this scene, so we need to keep a good amount of light on him. So flick the lamp on, the standing lamp, this one right here. Flick this on to him the entire time. And this is Anez's room, by the way. That's what this whole corner is right here. Maybe you can see this. This entire corner right there in the corner. This is the set for Anya's room. So Chuck is going to be talking a lot of the time. Flick that lamplight on there. It's going to illuminate him more, but it's not going to be super distracting. And if that isn't enough for you, you can take one of these and put it like that. If that lamplight isn't enough for you, you can do that. But there should be a barrier between the game world and Anez's room. Oh, now we're into the fairy forest. Oh, God, I'm tired. For this scene, it would be good if we had the lighting tinged a bit with whatever color Farah ends up being in. This will make her pop out against the much larger figures also present in this scene. Now, don't go like full red, full murder red if she's wearing red, but, you know, kind of a little bit of a difference between the normal yellow wash lighting color and red, so kind of like an orange or something like that. Sprinkle in a few red lights. It'll make her pop out and stand out against the larger figures that are in this scene. Alright, scene 8, just in Anya's room. I believe Miles and Chuck and Miles get into a argument in this scene about whether or not Chuck is boning Anya's. And so, yeah, just have some lighting up on that so we can see what's happening. Then we go into the game world. Anez and Tilly are going to have a private conversation during this scene, so when that is happening, cut all the lights except for Chuck's table light, because remember, he is speaking for Tilly, technically. So cut all the lights except for that one, and put 2 spotlights on Tilly and Anez. And then after that little private conversation is over, we can go back to the wash lighting. But the idea here is that we're just gonna focus in on them because they're having this little aside that's happening outside of the logic of the game world, because none of their other party members hear it. When we go back to Vera's office set, there's really nothing special about this scene, so we're just gonna have it be like this. The game Overworld, back here in scene 11, we need to give the audience something to show the visual disconnect that's happening between Agnes and Tilly. And I thought about this for a while, and what I finally decided on was that you put a spotlight, you have the wash up, you have this beautiful wash up, and you put a spotlight on Agnes, and you make it kind of fade in with the light around it, so it's not super obvious. And you have Tilly standing next to her, and as the disconnect grows between Agnes, as Agnes keeps pushing and pushing and trying to figure out what was up with her sister, and finally Chuck says, "Hey, I don't know what was up with your sister because I'm not her. You have to remember that here. I can only do so much." And as that happens, dim the lights for where Tilly is at, because she's fading in a sense. She's not as lifelike as Agnes made her out to be. And we can show that by the fading light. And the reason we keep the spotlight on her is because Agnes she's the focal point of this scene. This is about her relationship with her sister, not her sister's relationship with her. And so we're going to keep her in this spotlight. We're going to fade out Tilly. And then once she gets the letter from Chuck, she'll have to walk over there or whatever, and the spotlight can follow her. She'll have to walk over to Chuck. When she gets that letter, then then we can fade out the lights and go into the next scene. Okay, Vera's office. This is actually kind of a cool scene because of the power dynamic that happens here. It's probably Vera's best scene. That's besides the point. So the scene starts, and Vera and Miles are kind of on even footing. You might even say that Miles has a bit of the upper hand just because he's angry. But as the scene continues to go on, Vera makes Miles look like the idiot that he is, which is oh so satisfying. And yeah, so as that happens, I would tinge the lighting with more and more of whatever color you decide on for Vera's costume. And that's going to make her pop out and stand out more against Miles and Steve, who are also in this scene. And hopefully the effect is that by the end of it, it looks like she's radiant and powerful, and the other two are just kind of, they're there for the ride. Okay, now we have scene 13, the game Overworld and Anya's room. There's nothing special about this scene, just keep the lighting this way the entire time. Yeah, I copy and pasted this from before because we're just back in... Oh no, we're in Agnes's office. Okay, yes, I remember now. So this is going to look almost exactly like Vera's office, except we're going to take out all the hippie stuff and we're just going to leave the boring stuff because, honestly, without Tilly to show off her human characters, Agnes is a very physically boring character. She doesn't have any quirks to her. She's trying to get to know her sister, and that's the conflict of this play, and it's what drives the play, and it's great. But Agnes as a character, as a fully fleshed out character, there's not a whole lot there. And that's not a criticism of the play, it's just a fact of the length of the play. You take something like Lord of the Rings, something that doesn't have a whole lot of symbolism in it, but all of the characters are fully fleshed out because of the length. J.R.R. Tolkien had time to fully articulate all of the characters. We don't have that kind of time in this play. The only character we really truly get to explore is Tilly, and Tilly's relationship to Agnes and vice versa. And so because of that, we're just going to have her with boring office supplies. The lighting for this is just going to be standard wash. The Mountain of Steepness. So Agnes and Miles are going to have a talk here, and then Miles is going to join into the play for a scene. Yeah, just have them have their conversation here, kind of in front. Don't light up the rocks or anything. We'll get to the rocks in a little bit. So the Mountain of Steepness, the scene plays out or whatever. What's her nuts dies. Lilith dies. Oh, poor Lilith. Yeah, she dies here. And then they challenge each other to, I don't know. When she dies, if you want to go above and beyond, I didn't add this in, but you could put a spotlight or something on her just to draw out the moment a little bit. But then we have a dance break, so that sacrifice is immediately undercut. And this is going to require a little bit of choreography, but my idea is that the actors would move the rocks into sort of a dance floor formation, like I've got indicated here, and then we take all the lights and we'd have them super colorized, and they'd make like a dance floor, you know, like a regular dance floor. You can even have a disco ball come down from the grid. And then we'll have the dance off scene, and then once that's over, all the rocks will still be there, and we'll finish out the rest of the scene with the stuff that's happening, and then Agnes gets pissed at Chuck or whatever, and we continue with that. And you can bring full stage lights up for that part. I didn't put that in here, but when she gets mad and flips the table, put the full stage lights up. All right, we're back in Vera's office, kind of. And Chuck comes in and talks to her or whatever. And this is not so much a lighting bit as it is going to have to be a stagehand choreography bit. So we're going to have the conversation in here, and then our actors are going to walk to the front of the stage. When they walk to the front of the stage, we're going to pull the front curtain behind them. We're going to pull that apron curtain behind them. So they're standing on the apron, and they have their conversation there. Now, while this is happening, backstage, the stagehands are going to change out the scene, so when we come back, oh, never mind. My bad. I'm getting ahead of myself here. That's the next bit here. We'll get to what I was talking about, but they're here and they're at the friend's house and they talk to the friends or whatever, and then they come back and we can transition between these two places by just removing the curtain again, and then we're back in Agnes's office, and we can have the conversation between Lilith and Agnes about whether or not Lilith liked Tilly or whatever that conversation is, and then we have the other guys. They're just kind of standing over here chilling. Okay, we're into the last stretch. Agnes's room in Game Overworld. There's not a whole lot to say here. We're just gonna have the standard wash that we've always had before. Then the actors will walk to the front of the stage, and while they walk to the front of the stage and they have their little conversation or whatever, they have some sort of conversation. Yeah, so this is the "No, I'm Spartacus" part of the play, where Tilly asks Agnes, "No, where would you find a monster or whatever?" And then the other guys kind of join in, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm a monster, no, I'm a monster," or whatever. Draw the apron curtain behind them, and in the back of the stagehands are going to change the scene. So they're going to pull this Agnes's room off, and they're going to put on 2 independent light sources and pull out the dragon. So then we can have the boss battle here. Now, there are a couple ways you can do the boss battle. If you can't afford a model, have the model and have her duke it out with the dragon with a sword, and that'll be fine. Oh man, I was gonna have a sound cue pulled up for this, but I guess I won't now. I can just make it with my mouth, and that'll have to be enough. Now, if you can't afford a model, you can have specific lighting. So you will dim this complete stage wash lighting, and you'll dim those 2 independent sources, and you'll have to have Agnes holding a bow or something. But you can take a spotlight and put. Oh, my back just clicked. That was really painful. You can put a gobo in front of the spotlight that's shaped like a dragon, and so you'll have one for the dragon swooping right and one for the dragon swooping left. So they're facing opposite directions from each other, and then just have her either dry fire the bow or shoot little foam darts up towards the grid as she's fighting the dragon. And when the dragon dies, there should be some sort of sound that goes, and then crashes on the ground. If you really want to know what I was thinking of, there's a 1937 dramatization of The Hobbit, narrated by Gail Chugg, and the part where Smaug dies is specifically what I was thinking of. And then for the finale, Inez is kind of alone, and then Tilly comes in, and so we're going to bring spotlights up on them, and then as the others pipe up, we're going to bring the spotlights in on them, and as the narrator is saying her final lines, we're going to bring the spotlights down on all the other people, which will symbolize Anya's making peace with the things that have happened in the game, and she realizes the game is over now, and she's going to move on into the rest of her life. Music / audio. Now, there's many more things that I could say about the music and audio, and I will go through it quickly. We're not gonna see all the different clips. You can go through them and click on them one by one if you want, but I'll just kind of read the descriptions that I have here. Most of the music falls under the umbrella of ambient noise. If you have neither the inclination or the ability to put ambient noise into your scenes, then don't, because it's ambient noise. It's background noise. If you don't have the ability to do it, silence will work. It won't work just as well, but it'll work about as well. It'll be a little bit worse. Okay, so we start up and we need some sort of music that's fantasy / wonderment music to go along with the narration. We're not into the darkness yet, so this can be kind of lighthearted fantasy music, and I've got 3 examples of that down here. We're gonna have the same deal going on during the shadow puppet display. I would suggest a record scratch and like a screech noise when the car crash is announced, because that's pretty bad. You don't want to have awesome music playing during that. So the script calls for a very specific song here. I don't like that song very much, so I decided to try and go with Teenagers by My Chemical Romance instead. It's just as appropriate, and it actually fits with the description of rocking out, which is what Chuck is supposed to be doing in this scene. After he's interrupted, just go silent or pipe in some low buzzing fluorescent lights, and thankfully, wondrously, you can find buzzing fluorescent. I'm really tired if you can't tell. Buzzing fluorescent light sounds on YouTube, and that loops for about 10 minutes, so it should be long enough. Okay, so for the first part of this scene, she's talking to Miles. I would pump in some street noise. You can find street noise on YouTube. It's easy enough just to cut some of that and put it in behind the conversation, and that'll help establish, that like they're in an apartment right now and they're talking or whatever, and outside the world is still going on. By the time it's just Tilly and Inez talking, the street sound should be cut and either have no audio playing or something that lets the audience know that they're in the game world now. I think I have some fantasy music queued up here. I'm not entirely sure. I made this about 2 days ago now. When Chuck pops out and the strobe effect is being played, some sort of cliche action song can be played. This isn't 12th Night or whatever, so we don't have to be super creative. Just something actiony, like Thunderstruck by AC/DC, which is caught on recently in movies whenever we need an action montage song. Yeah, just like they do in the movies, cut straight to the part where they go Thunderstruck. You know that part. It happens about 150 in this particular video that I'm in. Tail off as Chuck begins to digress into why he's not fat, and by the time we bring the lights up in the other half of the stage, it should be cut completely, and we go to the Mission Impossible music. The Mission Impossible music, the iconic part, which is what I think they're talking about, it starts at 8 seconds in. Before that, there's just some weird snare drum vamping that happens. It's really weird and really not what they want here. So just 8 seconds in, the Mission Impossible theme is it's fine for this, honestly. It is. If you can't get the rights to it or whatever, then you have to find something that sounds like it. But yeah, if you're a small theater and nobody's gonna care, then just use it. Oh, the introductions are done and the monsters have been fought. So we're just gonna have some quiet music here. Not silence, because this isn't a very serious moment, but something, kind of chill. And I've got 3 examples of that, and then the scene's over. Now we're back to Orcus's hangout. So we're just outside of his cave. We need some cave music. I've got that listed here, and then we should cut that out as soon as they go into Orcus's cave. Now we're in Orcus's cave. We need something that feels cluttered and nerdy and fun. Thankfully, I know just the songs that fit that description, and I've got 2 songs here that fit that description. I know one of them is 1 Week by Barenaked Ladies, and I forget what the other one is. If the actor playing Orcus reads like Tom Haverford from Parks and Rec, which is by far my favorite reading of his character. Just if you know who that character is and you want to go back and read this or whatever, read his character as if it's Tom Haverford from Parks and Rec. Honestly, it makes him so much more likable and not really compelling of a character, but it makes all of his lines more funny. If you really like the idea of the music playing in the background or whatever, you can have a small rewrite where Tilly and Anyez are constantly having to shout over Orcus here trying to sing along. Oh, I didn't label anything. Oh, I labeled it in the previous scene. Yes. Anyway, this is the general layout of what I was thinking Orcus's hangout would look like. Anyway, you can do a small rewrite where they're having to shout over the singing or whatever. Swell the music as we fade out and keep it loud as the scene changes. Fade it out as we transition into the real world of the next scene, and that's going to be a common trick that I use here to establish setting. This scene doesn't really need any sound. You can pipe in the fluorescent light buzzing sound or whatever, and if you want, right before you get to the scene change, you can pump in some school hallway noises. You can find those on YouTube, and I have them linked later on in this presentation. Okay, so now we're into the game over. Oh God, that's right, that's this scene. Okay. Scene 6. I'm just gonna read straight off of my speaker notes here. This is our first proper fight. So we've got some really cool, awesome fight music for this. I believe it's the theme of Rohan, and then also there's a song from The Witcher called "The Trail." The video game, The Witcher, not the Netflix series. Netflix series, yeah, it's all right. It's not great. I'm gonna drag this up so I can see it better. Alright, you gotta make sure that you start around 10 seconds in though. I don't like the idea of hardcore rock music here because it takes the audience too far out of the fantasy world setting. Plus, we have people talking during this, so I'm not sure that songs that have words in them blaring is going to be the best thing for making it so that people can understand the words being said by the actors. That doesn't click for me. There is a place and time for rock music that has words in it, and we will get to it, rest assured, but this is not that time. When Anyez levels up, there are a lot of really good level up sounds that you can find online. I've got them linked there. Just pick one of those. You'll have to do some editing to get it out of its cage that it's in. The video is what I mean by that. They're all lumped together in the same video. After the exchange about her leveling up has passed, we can go back to some nice chilling ambient noises for a while. And I've got a couple of examples there. When Orcus calls out Lilith for being AWOL, cut the music, then resume with poof and some light and magical noise as the map appears. And I've got a magical noise, or I've got poof, and I've got magical sounds, just like that. For the sort of between scene montage that the script calls for, music like what I've got linked here. I forget what this is, but when I was doing it, I was very, very strategic about what I placed where. Um, it's probably not a bad idea to have the words for the audience to focus on in the music, as there is no dialogue on stage that they should be paying attention to. If you want a song that sounds less tacky, you could take a page out of Kingsman's playbook and play the guitar solo from Freebird under the first montage. Otherwise, songs that have about the same level of energy as the LL Cool J song include Don't Stop Me Now by Queen, Sympathy for the Devil by the Rolling Stones, or Highway to Hell. Oh yeah, so what they're doing here is they're having their Zombieland montage where they're killing um, nameless enemies in a variety of ways. And so they wanted a song to cover up that montage. This play really wanted to be a movie. You can feel it from the writing, because some of this stuff just isn't possible on a stage. Like, you can't have a bunch of different cuts of these characters killing monsters. You can't have that. This play really wanted to be a movie, and then it just wasn't. um, so we're in the forest. There's a very, very, very perfect song for forests that I came across. Honestly, just use that one. It's made by an independent person on YouTube, and I think he put all the stuff to public domain, so you shouldn't have to worry about that. Once you get into the fight scene, this is a wordless fight scene, more or less, so we can have all kinds of fun songs. I like Welcome to the Black Parade by My Chemical Romance. Only use the second half of that, though. The first half is quite slow. Separate Ways by Journey would work, or Round and Round by Rat. Something nice and high energy. And we're going to swell that music through the blackout and well through the scene change until we fade out and open into the next scene. So here we have our first tense scene, and we're going to be respectful of it, because they don't happen all that often in this play. I wish they did, because it would make the play a lot more meaningful, but they don't. So we're going to be respectful of this one tense scene and just be nice and silent. Okay, scene 9. So we're going to open by establishing with one of those two songs that I got linked or something like them. You're going to have to cut this out for the scene, though. For all of its side tracks, this is actually kind of an important scene, so no music here either. Or at least it is an important scene until it's interrupted by the succubus that come in. At this point, have some sort of smoke effect paired with an explosion, as is called for in the script. If you can't find anything in the way of explosion sounds that you like, I would suggest the main riff from Phantom of the Opera. You know the one that I'm talking about, the one that goes dun 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 dun. Don't let it go into the words of the song, though. I've got a karaoke version linked if you want to keep that song going as they're on stage. And provided that someone really good is playing Lily, the rest of this scene should center on her emotional roller coaster. So we're going to be respectful of that and be kind of silent. As we close out the scene change, music should sound more sad than the intro, and something like one of those two things. Tilly really gets taken for a ride in this scene. So, you know, the more respectful we can be of that, the better. Alright, we're back in Vera's office, and here I've got the school ambient noise. This scene is kind of tense, and at the same time, Inez spirals out of control. To emphasize this, I would back off the music entirely. But, oh! Okay. There was a whole thing, and I'm going to pull it up because this is actually important. So, Inez starts to go a little bit nuts in this scene. Oh man, I forgot where it's even at. But as she's getting tense or whatever, I'm going to say that you should take some unsuspecting sound and slowly make it more and more loud as she gets more and more out of control in this scene, until finally she shouts, "Tell me," at Lilith, and then cut the music there because Vera is going to come in and she's gonna like talk some sense into Anya's here. And the reason that we have that buzzing getting louder and louder is because it's going to symbolize how she's getting more and more out of control, and things are affecting her more and more. And then the scene change music should be kind of uneasy here. If you want to know where I got that idea from, there's a BBC production of Lord of the Rings that is a dramatization, and it was released in '88 or something. It's the one with Ian Holmes in it playing Frodo. Anyway, whenever the ring is starting to affect somebody and have influence on them, they have a sound effect that they swell up to until either the ring fully corrupts them or they snap out of the ring's hold. And that's where I got this idea from, and it works really well for them. It really does. We're going to swell the scene change music into the establishing music for this scene, and then fade it back as the serious conversation between Anyaz and Tilly happens. At the end of the scene, fill the uncertain music back out through the scene change. Here we're going to establish with the school ambience as before, but edit in some slamming locker doors, or if you want to be really edgy, some swearing teenagers. Miles comes into this really mad, so we're going to kind of go along with that. When the scene starts, just go with a low buzzing sound. It's kind of annoying, just like Miles a little bit. But mostly it's just because there's fluorescent lights in the building and they make sounds. Start it off a bit stronger and then back it off in the scene as Miles realizes how much of an idiot that he is. Plus, this is an F plot anyway. Like Miles' inclusion in this play is baffling to me. This otherwise well-written play includes some boring plot featuring Miles the Tool, and I just don't understand it. Swell out with regular school ambience and fade in some chill fantasy music like we had earlier. So we're going to come into scene 13 with some not so intense music. I've got a couple links there. This is another important scene. We're going to be respectful of it. When Chuck talks, cut the music off roughly and then ease back into it as the fantasy world fades back into focus. This time we don't have a long time to stay on the beautiful fantasy world sounds. And once the argument in the scene heats up, we are going to need to be quiet. Again, I don't like how hard it is to have a serious moment in this play, but this is kind of a serious moment. Which is nice. By the time Tilly says he touched me, bring back some slightly more edgy music as the tone shifts from self-deprecation into guilt, or self-deprecation and guilt to plain anger. This is about the time that Anyaz has the lines that start with fine 2 times in a row. And I've got a couple links there. You're going to want to start that second one 20 seconds in. Continue this through the fight. Also, when Chuck is speaking on behalf of the plot and not to the hindrance of the plot, keep the music going through it. And then swell the music out as the scene closes. Alright, we're back into Anyaz's office. We're into Anyaz's office. So we've got an actual full-out serious scene here. And oh, this is where I had the ring sound effect. Well, you know what? You can do it both places because it works both. But make sure you do it here, okay? Do it here for sure, alright? Exactly 429 in the 3rd chapter. You know what? I can find that because I know exactly where that's at. 41:29. Alright, here you go.
You've spoken very handsome all along and put me off my guard.
This is Faramir talking to Sam. Sam is just given away that Frodo is carrying the ring.
So it seems.
So that is the answer to all the riddles. The one ring that was thought to have perished from the world. And Boromir tried to take it by force. And you escaped and ran all the way to me. And here in the wild, I have you. 2 halflings and a host of men at my call. And the ring of rings. A chance for Faramir, captain of Gondor, to show his quality.
Draw your sword, Sam. Sam, I mean.
Okay, there it was. That was what I was talking about earlier. I forgot exactly where it was, but I did write it down here. So, huzzah. If at the end of the scene, fade back into silence, but bring back the peaceful fantasy music after a few seconds in order to set up the next scene. Alright, so I've been waiting for this scene. First things first, coming in, we should have some sort of Chuck music playing, some sort of nerdy song playing. I'm thinking Pink Floyd, Another Brick in the Wall. That's the We Don't Need No Education, that one. Keep it in the background as mood music. This also serves an undertone for the grossness of Miles for the majority of the scene. However, once he switches character and tries to be nice, we can cut the music and keep silent and get to the game world. So at this point, it is finally time to use the Misty Mountain ambient noise, which is honestly perfect for this. It has mountain noises, it's a little bit tense, and it's just like the first part of the scene. The awesome music will unfortunately be interrupted by Evil Gabby and Evil Tina. When they show up and do the same effects, lighting and audio cues as before, then we got to figure out some kind of evil music for them. I've got a couple of songs here listed, or I've just got the one. Evil music on YouTube. If you look up evil music, you'll get a lot of things that sound kind of like this. So we need to come up with some battle music. I've got a couple of examples there. And if you want to be really corny at the end, play the Titanic theme song as Lilith dies. I wouldn't suggest it though. Like, this is one of the few serious moments that we have in the play, like truly serious moments, and I'd like to be respectful of that. Okay, now I dislike this next part of the scene because this dance music, seriously, that's just brain dead. I personally like the idea of having separate songs for who's dancing because the tone of how they're dancing very much changes, and so does the style. So for the first one, I believe I've got September linked, and that's when Anya's and Tilly and the gang, they're all dancing in their goofy way. And then we switch it to Believer by Imagine Dragons, because that would work with the hip-hop cheerleading fusion, or whatever they're the evil succubuses are supposed to be doing. Then we kill them, and we've got a bit of important character building to do after that, so keep the music off. This is a little bit undercut by the fact that it was precipitated by a literal dance-off, but, you know, whatever. So, oh yeah, this is just continuation of what I was doing. We're going to change the lighting from this dance to regular lighting. That's what happened there. Okay, for this scene, I would just play some quiet love song that came out of the last decade. Pretty much anything by Ed Sheeran that has a BPM of under 100 would work, so no Castle on the Hill, and no Shape of You, and no Galway Girl. None of those things. Any of his slow songs, you know, like Perfect or Photograph, or I don't know, one of those other ones. Also, Love Someone by Lucas Graham or This Town by Niall Horan would do. Just as long as it's a quiet, bittersweet tone of whatever. And it's not so much about the words in these songs, it's about the sound that they have. And so much to the point that I would suggest even running the songs without words in them. You can find piano renditions. And then continue that through them going to the front of the stage and then back to it again. Now, the last scene, this whole last scene, this monster mass scene, last scene. Okay, The Beholder fight's going to last for less than the opening of this song, so this song will work really well, and it sounds really cool, and it's perfect for boss fights, at least the beginning of it. Yeah, just kill it as soon as she kills the Beholder. For the rest of the scene, we're going to swell this song here, because there's not a whole lot of this scene going on. This song is great final boss music. It just is. I would start it from the second verse and continue, or if you find that you need more time, you can start it from the first verse and continue. Maybe edit out the chorus. I don't know. But then we're going to go into this, and finally we're in the finale, and all we need here is silence, because this is the most serious part of the play, and it's the most meaningful part of the play. And then at the end, for the curtain call, play your favorite song. And that wraps up my video. I'm going to upload this to YouTube and send you a link on it. Alright, bye.